Well, it is official. Cleveland Browns have actually taken the practice field to begin the journey of the 2025 season. Oh, yeah, the new helmet was released. We'll start with that because we definitely have some thoughts. Browns 3D on the OBR streaming network begins now. Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends, your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound Browns 3D on the OBR streaming network. I am your host, Jeff Lloyd. As always, we appreciate everybody that comes to the OBR.com daily for their favorite Cleveland Browns written content, and then joins us every evening at 6 p.m. on the OBR streaming network, Browns 3D. Now you will get OBR weekly at 7. We'll have some summer scouting on the center position from Jacob Roach at 8 o'clock. Make sure you stick around for all that. If you didn't catch it, we had a noon episode, special episode, talking about some of the players and their injury designations as we begin Cleveland Browns 2025 training camp. Make sure you subscribe to the OBR on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to the OBR over on Twitch. Make sure you go to the OBR.com. Now is the time to get your VIP insider access. Along with that payment, you get Paramount Plus. You get two great things for the price of the one. Who doesn't love a BOGO? You get insider information. You get to ask the insiders. All of this certainly available at theobr.com. We appreciate everybody for following along with us. We will start with the release of the new helmet. Now, the first thing I'm going to say is the uniform combination that will be worn with this helmet is probably my favorite Cleveland Browns uniform. Just simple, the all brown, the orange. Had a lot of success with it. This uniform at times, that's one of the reasons I've kind of gone fond of it. Back in 2020, certainly was a uniform combination they were using. I just like that uniform look. It's a good look for me. I absolutely just like that uniform. The helmet itself. Here's one of the problems I kind of have is in this picture, and if we are looking at the brown in the helmet and also the orange in the helmet, it kind of appears like they both have a gloss finish. Now, for those of you who aren't too familiar with paint, gloss is a paint finish. It is the shiniest of paint finishes. But in the pictures we saw of players wearing the helmet, it appears that the helmet is matte, which means no shine. So this is confusing just to look at it this way, of course. And of course, this picture is courtesy of Dude Wipes. Now, with all that being said, of course, we knew the brown helmet was coming. And the stages that went through to make this such a big reveal, I think everybody is anybody surprised by what this is? It was going to be a Cleveland Browns helmet with brown. When they wear white, the stripes are brown and orange. When they wear their traditional orange helmets, the stripes are brown and white. So here is the brown helmet, obviously with the orange stripes. I Everybody probably had a good idea exactly what this helmet was going to look like. So the lengths of the reveal, going to Pat McAfee on the Pat McAfee show, sending, of course, Brownie the Elf over there. The floating small barge, which was carrying the helmet. And I get it. I mean, you trying to create a spark, but at the end of the day, this helmet, I like it because of the uniform combination it's going to go with. I don't think anybody is going to, the spark certainly wasn't created. I do like that they kind of did the time released thing, like they did. Well, I guess it wasn't time released; it was win release. Back in 2018 for the Bud Light cans on all the fridges with the locks on them. Of course, I like the helmet. I just think the pomp and circumstance that maybe went around this, probably a little long in the tooth, and probably certainly not going to get the wow factor that maybe the franchise was hoping for. The other thing, now, there is a rumor going around, and everybody, if you saw the video, there was somebody that fell off the small floating barge. You can't even make this stuff up. I'm trying to hold it in. I really am. Now, the rumor is that perhaps the fall off the small barge was staged, and the thing was trying to get the video to go viral. I I mean, if that's the case, you know, we're opening training camp right now. Training camp is underway. Practice is underway. So what exactly is the buzz of the brown helmet? It'll be worn 3 times next year. Um, I know it's the Packer game. I know it's the Titan game. Look, I love the uniform combination. I like the helmet. I have no issues with that. I just think, though, if you took anybody who follows football in any way whatsoever and, gave them an art app on their cell phone or on their PC and said, make a Cleveland Browns helmet, but make it brown. I think every single one of us would have came back with the same helmet. This is the Cleveland Browns helmet in a brown version. Again, I don't have issues with it. I don't. But, this big lead up and Dude Wipes is the sponsor. When we think of the product Dude Wipes, there's only one thing anybody thinks about. And those jokes have been going on for years in regards to the Cleveland Browns and the fact that brown is one of their team colors. So again, I just, you know, I think it was a lot put into it, and I certainly don't think it is going to bring back the response that they were truly hoping for. But again, I'm cool with it. I really, really, I'm cool with it. I am. But again, the guy falling off the barge, again, that's kind of crazy to me. So I'm not really sure, how to take all of that. I understand you have a PR firm, all of these things, but again, I think the hoopla that they were trying to create, just not the case. The Browns have added a player to the roster. The player is defensive end KJ Henry. KJ Henry was a fifth round selection in the 2023 NFL draft by the Washington Commanders out of Clemson University. KJ Henry's college career was nothing special. 5-year player. First things first, when a player went to college for 5 years, that probably tells you, middle of the road player, roster filler, of course. 13 sacks in his collegiate career, 2 forced fumbles, 28 tackles for loss in 5 seasons playing at Death Valley for the Clemson Tigers. Played through the 2023 season with the Washington Commanders. I believe his totals there were 1.5 sacks in 2023. When the change was made to Dan Quinn for the 2024 season, now Dan Quinn's defensive beliefs and, players stylistically, size-wise, KJ Henry wasn't necessarily a fit for the Dan Quinn defense at 6'4", 255. He made it to the last round of cuts last summer and then eventually was released. Went to the Bengals for a hot minute on the practice squad. And then from there, he was claimed by the Dallas Cowboys. He did play a little bit for the Dallas Cowboys in 2024. Ironically enough, he went to the place where Quinn came from in 2024. And in a short amount of time, did accumulate 1 sack with the Dallas Cowboys. I believe he was waived somewhere right around Thanksgiving, November 23rd. Sounds like the date, if I remember correctly. Spent the, off season with the Philadelphia Eagles, was released from the Philadelphia Eagles, now today a Cleveland Brown. And as we said, this looks like a room that's probably locked and loaded at the defensive end position, seeing as we already have Myles Garrett, you already have Isaiah McGuire, you already have Alex Wright, Joe Tryon-Shoyinka. So there will be a lot of guys in rotation competing for that 5th defensive end spot for the Browns. He will be in competition with players like Cam Thomas, with Julian Okora, with Aiden Hutchinson, with Ellerson Smith. These guys will all probably be battling it out for one possible spot on the Browns 53-man roster and maybe subsequently an opportunity to be part of the Cleveland Browns practice squad. So KJ Henry not moving the needle necessarily, but with the release yesterday of a wide receiver, the Browns did have an opening on the 90-man roster. So therefore, you get this player in here today. Now, camp is open, obviously, and practice has been going on. And we are getting, kind of some ideas here. Coach Stefanski was asked before practice about his quarterback rotation, and he knew that question was undoubtedly going to come up. And there, the quarterback rotation, where Coach Stefanski said he had a plan, but the plan was obviously in pencil. And through practice today, there were some individual drills where Kenny Pickett was the first quarterback involved. Then it was Joe Flacco. Then it was Dylan Gabriel. Then it was Shador Sanders. There was some team activities involved. It was started by Joe Flacco. Then Kenny Pickett came in. Then Dylan Gabriel. So your Shador Sanders watch, and I get it. Everybody is certainly interested. We have not gotten much clarity, and it's obviously early. It's going to be joint practices is probably when we're going to start to maybe see this thing pick up a little bit as we get closer and closer to the exhibition games. Not practicing today, running back Jerome Ford. So not good, obviously. Jerome Ford is described to be a minor injury, not on the field for practice today. As we all know, Quinshon Judkins was excused from reporting to training camp. Two reasons: no contract. Obviously, we all know the other reason, the off-field incident that we are still waiting to find out where the legal system is going to take Quinshon Judkins next. So we got to heard from Stefanski certainly on the quarterback rotation. And, this is one of those things where Coach Steph is usually really good with this. Everybody's got a million questions, and Coach Stefanski basically just poos most of it and just gives you basically a straight line answer. Myles Garrett spoke. And I got to be honest, just looking at Myles Garrett, I think Myles Garrett is just ready to get back to work. Certainly a long, long offseason for Myles Garrett. Probably a little strenuous offseason for Myles Garrett. Some of that certainly was created by himself and his own camp. And they ultimately did achieve the goal that they wanted, was to get their big fat contract extension, which they did, which, as great as it is for the Browns to get Myles back done and handled and satisfied, it forced the Pittsburgh Steelers to give TJ Watt a similar but more lucrative contract that I just don't think TJ Watt is worth. I'll be completely honest with you. TJ Watt is a stand-up edge rusher. Most of the time rushes against right tackles. Myles Garrett is being blocked by 2 to 3 people. And I mean, the Village people are bringing their kids to yank on his jersey, pull on him any which way. Look, and I always say this, the Cleveland Browns fans think Myles Garrett is one of the greatest edge players in the NFL. He is the greatest player, the edge player in the NFL, just so we're all aware. They also think that TJ Watt is a phenomenal football player. Pittsburgh Steeler fans think TJ Watt is the greatest edge rusher that has ever lived, and that Myles Garrett is an average player. Look at social media, listen to the posts, listen to the written content. That's the problem. The Browns fans respect the TJ Watt Myles Garrett debate. The Pittsburgh Steelers in no way whatsoever do. And that's what makes for certainly a great rivalry. But, Myles, put things on himself. I am looking to reclaim Defensive Player of the Year. My expectations for this team are higher than ever. I don't know how, Myles. How are your expectations for this team higher than ever? How are your expectations higher for this team than maybe they were in the beginning of 2019? Or how are your expectations for this team higher than going into 2021 after you won a playoff game? I appreciate you being paid, being happy, being excited, but I don't know that anybody's truly believing or agreeing with you when you say your expectations are as high as ever for this franchise. Love you, Myles. We got to call it what it is. You actually did see some and genuine excitement, I believe, from Joel Bitonio. Of course, there has been so much talk this offseason and so many things that were changed in 2024, trying to get the best of Deshaun Watson's ability to show. And there's always been things that have been altered to try to get Deshaun Watson to play in a manner that was worthy of what the Cleveland Browns traded for him and ultimately paid him. And a lot of that came at sacrifices, certainly of the team as a whole, some positional units, and players individually. They were taking away some of the things that this team were best at. The wide zone was not used nearly as much as it was in 20 and 21, where this team excelled. The offensive line was essentially built for the wide zone. Joe Batonio took to it like a fish to water. Wyatt Teller, always a guy willing to work on his game, work on his body, found a way to get a little more athleticism out of himself, knowing that he was going to be pulling more often. The signing of Jack Conklin in 2020 was an absolute just, hey, here is a really great athletic offensive tackle. Let's pay him a boatload of money and get him in here. Posick, I still go back to Jacoby Brissett's first start in Carolina in 2022. And remember, there was the long run by Nick Chubb around the left end, and leading the run was Ethan Posick. And Nick Chubb was actually so sweet about it, he actually let Posick lead until there was no one necessarily really there for block. So Chubb just kind of gave him a little tap on the back, and Nick Chubb passed him by. But this offensive line was built to play the wide zone scheme. All these differences and changes and alterations that were done to accommodate a quarterback who never got it done. So you got to hear Joel talk about it today. We're going to run the ball more. We're going to be physical. We're going to be more physical in practice. You saw, and Joel at his age, normally you don't want to hear, normally a guy that age is, yeah, I'd rather take a couple practices off than be involved with all the physicality. When you're a player like Joel Batonio at his age, every hit counts. You don't know exactly how many you got left in you. But you saw how excited they were, which explains probably just how deep their frustrations ran with this team. And the fact that so many things were being altered to accommodate one. It should never be that way. Even if it is the quarterback, it shouldn't be that way. And the other thing is, if Deshaun Watson was as good, nothing should have been a change. If Deshaun Watson was that good, you will fit in anywhere. It was excuses, and it was cover-ups for the fact that the quarterback they gave up all these assets for and paid all this money to just wasn't good. Don't know if it was a mental thing, which is one of the things that I preached about the entire time when Deshaun Watson first got here to Cleveland. How do you perform when you're hated by everyone? Even in your own stadium, your home stadium. And that was one of the biggest issues. Deshaun Watson was never, ever going to get the public back on his side. Only way it was going to be is if his play picked up. And if his play was great. People will always turn a blind eye to what type of human being an athlete is if their play on the field or on the court is good. For him not being able to get it done, for him not to play well, of course, booed when he was injured, which still is absolutely disgusting. I'm sorry. But you can kind of understand what people's overall frustrations were. They had Baker. For the most part, everybody liked Baker. There were plenty of people that thought there could be an upgrade from Baker. Well, Deshaun Watson was never an upgrade over Baker Mayfield. And certainly for those same people, it probably twists like a knife right now, knowing that Baker Mayfield is excelling, of course, with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and getting the job done down there in Tampa. And it certainly didn't help when Baker Mayfield goes on, pardon my take, and, we asked about, I guess just being in the zone and just knowing when you were going to have a day. And Baker, of course, brought up the Cincinnati Bengals and how every week and every game day, he just started to salivate when it came time to play the Cincinnati Bengals because he basically knew they were going to beat the daylights out of him and he was going to throw for 3 bills and a couple of touchdowns. That brought Baker back to the Browns fan base fold even higher. So certainly the talk in reference to Quinshawn Judkins, and again, not an update because there is no update. But basically, the talk was, don't know where we are. We're going to have to wait and see. Certainly, Coach Stefanski and did mention at the time that Jerome Ford was not going to be practicing today, but did say that if you wanted to consider somebody a lead running back at this point in time for the Cleveland Browns, that player, of course, would be Jerome Ford. Now, I think Jerome Ford, for some reason, gets a bad rap here, and I don't necessarily know why. And it seems odd. He was the team's best running back in 2023. He was the team's best running back in 2024. You can go ahead and call your mom and whine about it, about Kareem Hunt and what he did in 2023. I don't want to talk about a guy who had below 4 yards per carry. Stop. It wasn't good. Jerome Ford at times for this team has been a spark plug. There have been numerous times where there have been big plays, whether running the football, big plays receiving the ball. Jerome Ford deserves more respect among the Cleveland Browns community. He's been a pretty good player. And we're talking about a guy who was a former fifth-round pick. Fifth-round picks, they produce it all. They become any part of your team. That's actually a really solid draft choice. But some of you here within the Cleveland fan base, and I'm sure some of you know who these people are, expect that every draft pick is going to hit. Well, Jerome Ford is another one that Andrew Berry did get right, but yet never seems to get any credit for. So the Browns practice Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. They'll be off Wednesday. Practice Monday and Tuesday. They will be off on Wednesday. They will be down. I believe it's opening the preseason schedule in Carolina. So certainly, looking forward to that. And this is now going to go very quickly. We'll be playing preseason games. Once you get that first training camp practice in, all of a sudden the calendar days just start. Nothing in the world goes faster than the NFL football season. Those 18 Sundays go by like a blink of an eye. So we're here. And all of us here at the OBR, we are going to tear apart everything there is. You're going to get opinions. You're going to get facts. You're going to get facts about opinions. You're going to get opinions about facts. That's what we do over here at the OBR. So certainly excited. And I'm sure there's going to be folks who are going to say after 1 or 2 days, why are we not getting more out of Shedeur Sanders? Why isn't Shedeur Sanders getting more reps? It's just going to be a slow, played out process. As much as I would say for what this team may finish in 2025 and most likely fall short of their goals of making the playoffs, Shedeur Sanders right now is the only one in that Cleveland Browns quarterback room who could possibly be the long-term answer, especially considering they have a golden ticket and possibly 2 golden tickets at the quarterback position coming up in next April's draft. And, Colin Cowherd, well, it's no secret, that Jimmy Haslam and, the Mannings are close, and Arch and, the agent, Jimmy Sexton, and, I don't even know what to do with that. I got to be completely honest with you. And does anybody believe in their right mind that, the Mannings and the next of their lineage are saying, oh, yeah, let's get Arch with Nick Saban, of all people, to the Cleveland Browns? The more I see a Nick Saban, the more I see a guy who's, further and further away from being involved in the everyday aspect of football, let alone NFL football. And not a total disrespect, obviously, to Nick Saban and certainly what Nick Saban did in his coaching career. I just don't see the Mannings saying, yep, that's the spot. Cleveland's the spot. It's where we're going to set Arch up for the rest of his life. And also the talk of, let's keep in mind, Arch is only going to his 3rd year of college. Both his uncles did 4 years. I'm not saying that's set in stone, but, Eli and certainly Peyton basically started the entirety of their collegiate careers. We are here now in year 3, and Arch Manning basically has, I think it's 95 career passes under his belt. And again, if there's one franchise, in my opinion, that could alter a potential plan of Arch Manning not playing 4 years in college football, it absolutely has to be the New Orleans Saints. And looking at the Saints right now, and looking at that roster and looking at that team, there is certainly a way the New Orleans Saints could easily end up in that top 5 and certainly be contending for the number 1 overall selection in the 2026 NFL Draft. So I'm not so sure, and just because Colin Cowherd throws it out there, that 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 holds much water at this point. Now, we certainly dealing with some issues and, players unable to practice. Jerome Ford, Mike Hall, David Bell, and, everybody is going to be paramount for this team. If there is any chance for the Cleveland Browns to have any taste of some success this year in 2025, this team is going to have to be healthy. It's going to be an absolute have to. And that would maybe be one of their biggest advantages, is that as opposed to, last couple of years being one of the teams with more injuries within the league. This year, they ideally need to be one of, if not the top teams as far as having injuries affect their roster and who can play on any given Sunday. We're really, really going to get deep into this. And of course, there's going to be the quarterback debates, and, certainly going to be players like Cedric Tillman and another skilled player like Harold Fannin, players that absolutely, are going to need to find some way to have some success for this team. Again, if you want this team to be successful, there's going to have to be players that are going to step up. We're going to watch certainly the offensive line. And, biggest thing for this offensive line is that they can make it from now until the regular season in one piece. Been a lot of moving parts on that offensive line. And in 2023, it kind of worked. 2024, it didn't. 2024 is more the norm. Once you start getting injuries on your offensive line, or you have players out there playing who are not 100%, the group as a whole is just going to suffer. We have players like Tavon Jenkins, who we don't know much about yet as far as the Cleveland Browns. He's been a player that has been good in his career, but he's also a player that's been injured in his career. Zach Zinter, it wasn't the smoothest go as a rookie. And I'll be fair in regards to Zach Zinter. Coming back from a broken leg, that's not always the easiest thing to do. And certainly not the easiest thing to do as you are transitioning from the end of your collegiate career to the beginning of your professional career. So maybe there is a chance Zach Zinter takes a jump this year. And as our Sam Penix said on the camp preview show that we put out for you guys on Monday night, and again, thank you to everybody that came along for that, there's possibility Zach Zinter is probably going to get the ball in his hands and asked to maybe be possibly a backup center as well. Anything about getting yourself onto the field, anything you can do to help your team win games. This is where we're at. The Cleveland Browns need health to be on their side, and they're going to need 53 guys to play as one if there is any legitimate chance for this team to taste success in 2025. Start Joe Flacco. See where it gets you. Otherwise, scrap it. And if Gabriel's your choice, play him. If Shedeur Sanders, and you make the right choice, play him. I am Jeff Lloyd, host here of Browns 3D. You can catch us every day at 6 p.m. Eastern as we kick off the OBR streaming network tonight after 7 o'clock. Fred Greetham, Barry McBride. You will catch them 8 o'clock. A little summer scouting with Jacob Roche, of course. So make sure you stick around for that. Thanks to everybody coming out every day for the written content at theobr.com. Check out the VIP package. Get all the inside information. get Paramount Plus right along with it as well. Make sure you are subscribed to the OBR on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to the OBR over on Twitch. This has been your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound Browns 3D on the OBR streaming network, and we will talk to y'all tomorrow.